Here now is Aunt Carol's story called True Pearls and False Papers.
Our story opens in Poland during the Second World War. Adolf Hitler, the Chancellor of Germany and head of the Nazi regime, was fighting to control all of Europe. On the first day of September 1939, Germany attacked Poland, and just 1 month later, after Poland's surrender, Nazi boots were pounding the cobblestone streets of Warsaw, Poland's capital city. In spite of Warsaw's citizens struggling to keep life as normal as possible, death and destruction lay everywhere. Buildings were in ruins, families were mourning their dead, and refugees streaming into the city from the countryside often found no place to stay but the street, and no food for their families.
Bread! Bread, please! Have mercy! Bread for my children, please!
The heart of Irena Sendler, one of the senior administrators in the Department of Social Welfare office in Warsaw, was touched as she saw the desperation that abounded everywhere, especially for her many poor Jewish clients. Irena was young, beautiful, and tiny, standing less than 5 feet tall, yet she had already begun to silently act in accordance with her daring, courageous spirit. Even before the German invasion, she had seen that there were adjustments that could be made in her paperwork at the welfare office to help the most desperate individuals.
Let me see here. Little Anya just turned 3. She won't be eligible for welfare assistance any longer. She's already half-starved. So I'll just change her birth date. There. Now she's officially much younger, and she'll qualify for benefits for months to come. It's only a clerical error if I'm ever found out, nothing more. I hope.
Irena's adjustments soon came to the attention of Irena Schulze, who was one of the supervisors over Irena's agency, a very precise woman who missed very little. When Schulze confidentially pointed out Irena's errors, Irena was sure she would be fired. But when she looked into the eyes of the person across her desk, she sensed there a woman with a heart as venturesome as her own. She hardly dared to hope that her impression could be true. And then...
Whatever adjustments you make in the records, Irena.
Adjustments?
Make sure your changes appear as careless mistakes. Don't change too much. Just the year and not the whole date.
The
number of people at an address or the number of rooms, but not both.
Yes. Yes, of course.
From that moment on, a lasting conspirators' bond existed between the two women as they became the closest of friends. And now that Nazi Germany controlled Poland, Irena's undercover work was even more dangerous. Jan Dobarzinski, who was Irena's immediate supervisor and head of her office, and his assistant, Jaga Pietrowska, could at any moment discover what she was doing. And since her actions could put them all in danger, Irena knew she had to be especially careful. Then one day...
Irena,
Yes? What is it, sir?
I have asked Jaga to share some documents with you for your files. Here she comes now.
Yes, Mr. Dobrazinski, just as you requested.
Well, I have to be elsewhere. You two, carry on.
Yes, sir.
Please, have a seat, Jaga.
Thank you.
You have something for my files? Documents, he said?
Yes, Irena. In my folder, I have these.
But Jaga, these are...
Blank?
Yes, blank. Official documents without names?
Birth certificates, marriage licenses.
Certificates of baptism.
Official documents, all of them. Official, but blank. Ready for...
Someone's name.
Yes, so it would seem.
Someone who needs a different...
Less Jewish.
Less Jewish name. Oh, Jaga, thank you.
We can get more, Irena. Mr. Dobrazinski and I know what you are doing, but we all must be so careful. No one must find out.
I know. There might even be some in this very office. If they knew, they might turn us in for the reward the Nazis are offering.
Yes. When you change the identities of your Jewish clients to Polish names so they can get more food, well, if it was discovered that we are helping the Jews...
We could be hauled off to interrogation and prison. I shudder to think of it, and the reward money would be so tempting.
Exactly. Money is scarce for everyone, Irena. Very few have enough to eat.
Yes. Even many of our Polish people are on the streets and destitute. But for the Jews, for them, it is worse.
Much worse. So then you know exactly what to do with these blank documents, yes?
Yes. And Yaga, thank you.
Over the next few months, conditions in Warsaw continued to worsen. More and more refugees fleeing from enemy soldiers and widespread starvation occurring in the countryside arrived to find that Warsaw had no room and no food for them. All of the shelters were full to overflowing, and several families were already living together in small apartments designed for a single family. That left only the streets, which were becoming crowded with the cold, starving, homeless, and helpless people. In addition, harsh orders from the Nazi command continued to be posted throughout the city on a daily basis.
All Jewish businesses must be transferred to German trustees.
A dusk to dawn curfew is established for all. Violators will be shot.
Social welfare benefits or services may not be awarded to any Jew.
Jews will be concentrated in forced labor teams.
All Jewish schools are hereby closed.
The discovery of secret radios is punishable by death.
All Jewish residents of Warsaw must be counted, and their names, addresses, and date of birth registered. This is a mandatory census.
And so it went. With the census, the Nazis would know the name and whereabouts of every Jew in the city. Decree after decree was issued, all of which were meant to control the Polish population and inflict more misery upon the Polish Jews. The effects were keenly felt by all, even those in the social welfare office.
Oh, Yaga, our friend Ava, happy, efficient Ava, our fellow worker, fired because she was a Jew.
Mr. Dobrozinski had to let her go, Irena. It is illegal now for her, a Jew, to be working here any longer.
She's gone to Centros, you know. The Jewish Charity Center, to help.
At least they try to feed people soup and black bread once a day. Soon even that will be impossible, since for the Jews, food is so scarce.
The Nazis ration themselves food for more than 2,600 calories a day. The Jews get less than 200 calories.
Not enough to keep a sparrow alive. If they weren't able to get a little food on the black market, they'd already be dead. Anyway, sometimes, somehow, they get a little medicine.
Yes, I know.
I see. I think, my friend, you have many connections.
And it was true. Irena did by this time have many connections indeed. In each of the 10 districts over which Irena had supervision, she had found a trusted and sympathetic worker who was willing to help her by distributing clothes or food, medicine, money, false identity papers, or ration cards. On her 30th birthday, Irena arranged a secret meeting in her apartment, which she shared with her ailing mother. She invited Jan Dobrazinski, Yaga, Ava, and Schulze. Her guests, honoring the occasion, brought unusual but much prized presents.
Oh, thank you, Yaga. A lump of coal. Such a luxury. Tonight we shall be warm.
Yes, a black pearl just for you.
And one from me as well.
True pearls, my friends, true pearls. Thank you so much.
Irena, dear.
Yes, Mother.
I think I'll retire now. It's getting late, and the bed seems to be inviting me.
All right, Mother. I have many things to discuss with my friends, anyway.
I thought as much. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mother. Sleep well.
As soon as her mother was settled, Irena's true reason for the meeting became clear.
We all know that while Jewish people are starving on the streets, the Nazi-controlled warehouses are full. But I have discovered how easy it is, even with badly forged false papers, to get the food. Those in charge hardly glance at the signatures or how authentic the papers actually are, and they hand over whatever is being requisitioned. So, what do you think?
It's all highly illegal, using false papers to get food.
Well, for now, I must be a common criminal.
Me too. I've already broken the law many times. There are so many rules for us Jews.
Maybe so, Eva. But you and Irena here are the most wonderful crooks I've ever known.
And we have to do something to help. People are starving.
I agree, Schultze. Are you in or out, Mr. Dobrzynski? If you're out, you should probably leave now before you hear anything more.
I'm in.
Good. I'm glad, Jan.
Schultze and I will try to smuggle the food we get into the Jewish section under the noses of the Nazi guards. My contacts, including Eva here, will help us distribute it. I'm sure you've already heard the rumors that the Nazis are going to build a wall around the Jewish section.
I'm sure they'll do it. They'll say it's for health reasons, to quarantine the areas of tuberculosis and typhus outbreaks and keep them from spreading.
Yes, Yaga, but maybe we can use their plan against them. You know how terrified the Nazis are of epidemics.
But by herding all of my people, the Jews, into a small area, disease will spread even faster. Somehow I know it must get better, but the streets are filthy. The people are infested with lice, and lice carry typhus. There are already outbreaks.
True, Ava, but the Nazis will put the rest of us, the Polish, in charge of the matter, so they don't have to be any more exposed to the disease than necessary.
It's very dangerous, but it could work.
We could all be risking prison, or worse, you know.
Yes, anyone assisting a Jew can be shot on the spot. As a Jew myself, I live with danger every day. But what if you are caught? What then?
Well, we'll just have to make sure we don't get caught.
Eva was genuinely touched by the support of Irena and her friends, especially since they would be putting themselves at such personal risk. And soon, as rumored, the Nazis forced the Jewish people to begin building the wall that would completely close them off from the rest of the world. Irena could clearly see that disaster lay ahead. Even now, when she visited her friend Eva at Centros, she could see how thin and tired she was.
Phew, what a day.
You're working yourself too hard, Eva.
Oh, it's just late. It's almost time for curfew, so all the other workers have left, I think. Anyway, what do you have for me, Irena?
I have these. More false identity cards. We have found the most artistic forger.
These look perfect, Irena. Let me see. Yes. Zawadzki, Gorski, Kamansky, new Polish names for my Jewish people. Thank you, my friend. But
What is it, Eva?
Why? Why do you do this, Irena? Life is hard for everyone now because of the war, but you could do as many do and turn your back to what is happening here.
No, I can't really. Because of my father.
Your father?
Yes, and my mother. They were both activists. My mother taught Polish history once, even though she could have gone to prison for her underground teaching. I'm so grateful to still have her close to me. But my father...
What about him?
He was a physician, the only doctor who would treat the Jewish poor during a terrible typhus outbreak, just like the epidemics that are beginning to sweep around us now. And then he came down with typhus himself.
Oh, no.
Yes. He ordered my mother to take me to go to relatives for just a few days, he said, but I never saw him again. I was only 7. He did it to save me. I couldn't even kiss him goodbye.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Before I left, he told me something I never forgot. His parting words to me.
Remember, Irena, there are only 2 kinds of people in this world, good and bad. And it doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, what religion or race. What matters is if they are good or bad.
I'll remember, Papa.
And if you see someone drowning, Irena, my darling girl, you must rescue him.
But what if I can't swim?
You must do something to help. You must not let him drown.
During the next few months, the wall surrounding the Jewish section, now called the ghetto by nearly everyone, was completed. built by the Jews themselves in forced labor teams. Many of them, weakened by their never-ending hunger, fell and died as they were laying the bricks. Then, on November 15th, 1940, the Nazi decree went forth.
The district is sealed.
All Jews living outside of the walls had been forced inside and allowed to take only that which they could carry or push on a handcart. Needless to say, the conditions that were already grim in this section were now beyond terrible. Soon, quarantines were imposed on sections several blocks square, leaving as many as 20,000 people at a time locked down without food or supplies for 3 weeks until the quarantine was over. Irena and Schulze, armed with special passes and dressed as nurses, ventured through one of the 22 gates in the wall on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day, in order to help as many people as possible.
Halt! You have the passes?
Yes, here.
Epidemic control passes?
Signed by Dr. Mikowski.
He's director of the Zakladov Sanitarium Sanitary Epidemiological Station.
Yes, I can read. Pass through.
Thank you.
Halt! Come back! Max, schnell! Quickly!
What is it?
Come! The bags! I must search.
But surely there's...
We just have bandages and medicine, nothing that...
Nein! No arguments! Open the bags.
Here, look.
Ugh. These bandages. They are dirty. They smell mit infection.
We have just come from...
You waste my time! Go on! Schnell!
Fortunately, neither this guard nor any of the others who demanded a search of their medical bags ever suspected that under the soiled bandages, which the guards scrupulously avoided touching, a false bottom hid forged documents, identity papers called Handcrafted, for specific clients of Irena and money for others. Neither did they suspect that tiny Irena often wore several layers of clothes under her own, clothes that she could distribute to the poor or that she had sewn money into her hem. Nor did they discover that the social welfare wagons, which were part of the plan devised by Irena and which passed through the gates into the ghetto, concealed bags of grain, turnips, carrots, and potatoes under heaps of soiled, foul-smelling sheets and bandages put there to keep the guards from searching.
Achtung! Achtung! Halt! Papers?
Here. You want to search?
Nein. Pass through. Schnell!
Still, in spite of their successes, Irena was continually distressed that she and her helpers couldn't do more. After all, there were now nearly 500,000 people jammed into the Jewish ghetto.
Oh, Schulze, look at the street filled with starving people. Look there.
Yes, some little orphans huddled there together to stay warm.
But of course they are not warm. Oh, their little legs are like sticks. Their feet are bare. Oh, Schulze, they tear at my heart. There are so many children with no one to care for them, and they are dying. So many. Every day, every night.
Bread, please help me.
Here, a piece for you.
Thank you.
There's our violinist. What a brave man. He is here every day playing his violin, hoping someone will give him money.
Please, have mercy for my children.
There. May God be with you.
You are an angel. Thank you. Thank you.
And so, Irena, Schulze, and all the other members of Irena's network continued their secret, dangerous work of ministering to the suffering Jewish people of Warsaw. Could their luck last? Could they continue without being discovered? It was a question that daily weighed on the heart of the tiny, determined, dedicated, and daring Irena Sendler.